All right, so there's this huge debate blowing up online right now, and it's getting millions of views. It's Christianity versus Islam. On one side, you have a massive influencer who says Christianity is basically over. On the other, a pastor who spent his life defending the faith. So today, we're going to unpack this whole thing.
And it all really kicked off with this one quote. This is from Andrew Tate, not long after he converted to Islam. He just comes right out and says it, Christianity doesn't mean anything anymore. Whoa. That is a bold claim, and it really lit a fire online. So let's get into what's actually behind it. So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the bigger picture, this kind of crisis of faith that's happening. Then, we'll dig into Tate's actual case against Christianity. After that, we'll hear the defense. Then, we'll get into the really deep stuff, the core theological differences. And finally, we'll talk about why this debate is hitting so hard right now. You know, you can't really understand why this debate is so popular without looking at the world it's happening in. In a lot of the West, people just aren't as religious as they used to be. And that's left this big void. People are searching for something to believe in, you know? A moral compass to guide them when everything feels kind of chaotic.
And this whole search for meaning got put on a stage, basically, in a debate between these two guys. You've got Andrew Tate, the famous influencer freshly converted to Islam and making a strong case for it. And then you've got Cliff Knechtel, a pastor who's been debating these ideas on college campuses for decades.
Okay, so let's really get into Tate's argument. What's his actual problem with Christianity? Well, it's not some ancient theological thing. It's very much about how he sees Christianity being practiced, or not practiced, in the world today. So his main beef is this. He thinks modern Christianity has just gotten soft. He says it's so tolerant of everything that it doesn't really stand for anything anymore. He looks around and sees people who call themselves Christians, but they won't even defend their faith when it's made fun of. And for him, if you won't defend it, do you even really believe it?
And this quote just sums it all up for him. In his mind, it's pretty simple. Islam has strength. It has rules, clear red lines you don't cross. And its followers, he argues, will actually stand up for those rules. For Tate, that's what a real, living religion looks like, and it's the core reason he converted.
Okay, but that is just one side of the coin, right? Cliff Knechtel's response is fascinating because he doesn't just argue against Tate's points, he totally reframes the conversation by going all the way back to the very beginning of both faiths. And this is where it gets really interesting. Knechtel points out this absolutely fundamental difference. He says, in Islam, God's ultimate revelation, the big miracle, is a perfect book, the Quran. But in Christianity, the miracle is a perfect person, Jesus. And that single difference, he says, changes absolutely everything.
And because of that core difference, Knechtel argues you get two totally different approaches from their founders. He paints this picture of Muhammad coming with a sword to conquer and expand the faith, and contrasts that with Jesus, who came with a towel to serve, to wash feet, a message of humility and love.
Then he brings up history. He points out that Muhammad lived more than 500 years after Jesus. So Knechtel's challenge is this: how can a new revelation, centuries later, claim to correct the original story when the original story is based on eyewitness accounts, people who were actually there, who said that Jesus was God?
So, those are the big picture arguments, but all of this is growing from some really deep theological roots. To really get it, you've got to look at the core beliefs that make these two faiths so different.
And man, when you put them side by side like this, you really see it. They don't just disagree on one thing. It's a bunch of fundamental things. The very nature of God himself. Is he a Trinity or a strict oneness? The identity of Jesus. Is he the Son of God or just a prophet? Even where their holy books came from and how a person gets to heaven. It's all different. So, for Christians, this idea of the Trinity is just central. It's a mystery, for sure, but it's their way of understanding how God can be one and yet also exist as three separate persons: the Father, the Son, who is Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. It's how Jesus can be both fully God and fully man at the same time. Now, it's a super complex idea, so people have tried to come up with analogies to get their head around it. None of them are perfect, but one is the Tri-Cities idea. You have three totally distinct cities: Pasco, Richland, and Kennewick. Pasco is not Richland, but all three of them together make up one single thing, the Tri-Cities. It's an attempt to picture three distinct persons sharing one single essence. But then you flip over to the Islamic side, and for them the idea of Tawhid is everything. It's the absolute, non-negotiable bedrock of the faith. God is one. Absolutely one. Indivisible. And so from that perspective, the Trinity isn't just a different idea, it's considered the greatest sin, because it's like saying God has partners.
So that gets us to the big question. Why is this ancient theological debate all of a sudden going viral on TikTok? Why now? Well, it's because it's tapping into something very, very modern.
Cliff Knechtel actually has a theory about this. He suggests that the West is going through this massive crisis of meaning. The idea is that there's no real right or wrong, that having more stuff is the goal, and that your personal choice is the most important thing in the universe. Well, all of that has left a lot of people feeling totally lost.
And you can see why, right? When the world feels chaotic and you don't know what to believe, a system like Islam that offers real structure, a clear set of rules for how to live, how to pray, what to do, that can feel incredibly appealing. It's like a map for a world that feels like it doesn't have one.
But, and this is a big but, Knechtel throws out a huge warning. He says, yes, structure can be good, but you have to be careful. He points to the Pharisees in the Bible. They were the guys who followed all the rules perfectly. They were so obsessed with the structure that they fell into what he calls deadly legalism, and they totally missed the whole point, which was love. And that, right there, is the heart of this whole modern debate. It's bigger than just Christianity versus Islam. It's about what we as people are really searching for. In a world that feels like it's spinning out of control, do we need the freedom of grace, or do we need the certainty of rules? And which one of those paths actually leads to a meaningful life? That's the question so many people are trying to answer right now.